I told them to leave, my demons depressed. They want me to die, they know I'm a threat. I have a few things to get off my chest. I've been in the darkness, not living the best. Searching for real, I wonder what's next. Pushing my limits, no time for the rest. It can get ugly, I'm willing to bet. Play the wrong cards, you end up in debt.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Brothers Compass podcast. My name's Arlin. I'm the host, and I'm a veteran of the 75th Ranger Regiment, 3rd Ranger Battalion. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you my personal story, my personal journey. That way, you know who your host is and kind of where I come from. So that way, you can feel free or safe to ask questions about anything that you may have. Just a little background. Brothers Compass exists to help you find your way after service. That's what we do. And I'm not talking about helping you find a job or anything like that. I help you find you. I help you find and rediscover who you are and where you're going in life. I help you define that. That's such an epidemic, is such a problem among the veteran community, is we get out and we don't know who we are and we don't know where we're going. So that's what we're doing here. So listen if that resonates with you. If it doesn't, find another podcast where they're telling cool guy stories. All right, let's get started. So I kind of come from a military background. My dad was an Air Force guy. My grandfather was an Air Force guy. My other grandfather was a Korean War vet and an Army guy. And so I've just kind of been surrounded by it my whole life and, always intrigued with it, always had super respect for it. And I was in Bible school. I was in a theological seminary, and I had been raised in church, my whole life, very strict church. And so I ended up in a theological school. 2 years into that, I became very complacent, and I was not really paying attention to my studies and, not really giving it everything that I should have. And I just wanted some adventure. I just wanted something different. And so my dad had just come back from a TDY trip, and he was talking about like inspecting this unit of special operations C-130s, And so it sounded cool. It was intriguing. And he was like talking all this special ops stuff. And so that it was kind of on my brain. And a few days later, the Army recruiter called, and I wasn't there. I was at school, but he called my house, and my dad answered and pretended to be me because my dad knew what was going on, knew I wasn't paying attention to my studies, and dad pretended to be me because he's like, yeah, if I can get this dude to do anything, it would be amazing. So he pretends to be me. They spark a conversation, Anyway, eventually my dad confesses like, hey, you're actually looking for my son. I'm not him. So they exchange phone numbers, and I give the recruiter a call. And so the recruiter's like, what are you interested in doing? And I kind of just, as best I could, say like, I'm interested in doing something, crazy, something adventurous, something, that's going to be wild. And he said, okay. And he had heard the special operations piece, And so he goes, well, so you're interested in special ops. I can get you an Airborne Ranger contract right now. And I was like, well, that's great. What's an Airborne Ranger? Because literally up until that point, I had no idea. I had never even heard of it. And so he tells me, well, when the government needs somebody taken out or something blown up or something destroyed with great efficiency, that's who they send. They send the Rangers. And I said, okay, well, that's what I want to do. And so that was kind of it. Like that was our first conversation. And I started filling out the paperwork. I started doing all the aptitude assessments, all the practice ASVAB tests, and all the physical assessments, all the things, did them all. So I find myself at MEPS, and I make it all the way through MEPS, through all physical stuff. And the guy at the where you select your job, I don't even know what he's called, the job specialist maybe, but I'm sitting there at his desk, and I tell him, well, that's what I want. I want an Airborne Ranger contract. And he's like, oh yeah, I don't have any of those, but I do have, some, and I don't even remember what it was, like a cook or something. And I was like, well, see you later. I'm out of here. So I get up and walk out, and I'm not sure. My memory's a little foggy, but I don't remember if I made it to the door or if I actually made it all the way, outside into the lobby area. But he ends up calling me back, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I found one. I got a contract for you." And so I was like, "Okay, well, oh, that's what he said." He's like, He's like, yeah, I made some phone calls. I made some phone calls and got you a contract. I'm like, all right. So anyway, to sum that up, I left that day with a signed option 40 contract and did all the paperwork, and I was supposed to leave a month later. So go back to Bible school. I wrap things up there and finish out that semester. And I leave for the Army in May of 2005. And so I remember being in formation at 30th AG, like that first day, or maybe the second day, where you first get issued all your stuff and you're first wearing a uniform, and they're trying to indoctrinate you into the Army way of life. And I remember standing there screaming one of the chants they had you saying, and it was, I don't remember all of it, but it was like, ooh, I want to kill somebody. Ooh, I want to kill somebody soon. So damn soon. And I remember that coming out of my mouth thinking, man, this is weird. This is so wild. A month ago, I was in Bible school, talking about saving life and all this. And now I'm screaming about killing people. And it just felt weird. It was very, it's very culturally different than where I had just come from. So, and that was kind of the beginning of the journey. I went through basic, went through basic and then straight on to airborne school. I think I had 3 weeks of hold between basic and airborne, and then I got to go to airborne school, and no issues there. I went straight through airborne school and graduated. And then I had an additional 3 weeks of hold between airborne and RIP. It was RIP back then. This is 2005. And so the day that the RIP cadre picked us up, and it was still hot. It's South Georgia, it was still hot and just kind of miserable, muggy that Georgia is. They pick us up. They're cramming us on the bus. Everybody's got duffel bags and they're stacked up higher than the seats. And we could not move fast enough for these guys. And they're screaming at us, to do push-ups. And up until this point, you don't have to elevate your feet to do push-ups. But once you belong to the Rangers, now, if you are untabbed, you must elevate your feet to do push-ups. And so I'm discovering this. I'm learning this on the bus, on this Bluebird bus between airborne school and RIP. And they're screaming at us to do push-ups and like elevate your feet. And so like I found this hole to slide my body into through the duffel bags where my hands could touch the ground and my feet were like elevated somewhere above the windows on some duffel bags, and I was kind of doing like shoulder push-ups. That's all I could manage, and it was just wild, man. It's just it's funny to think back on it, but it wasn't so funny then. So we get to RIP, we get into the green fence. It was a green fence then. And they're scuffing us up. They make us dump everything. They're checking all of our stuff for contraband and making sure we're not bringing in stuff we're not supposed to. And like I said, it was hot and we're standing on blacktop. And at some point, we're all in our underwear. We're just in underwear. And the blacktop was hot, man. It was like burning my feet. And we're doing push-ups. And it was burning my hands. The blacktop was burning my hands. And so I thought I was going to be slick, and I reach over and I grab my duffel bag and like slide it over and put my little soft hands on my duffel bag. I'm doing push-ups on this empty duffel bag. Well, one of the cadres sees, so I knew immediately that was a terrible decision. And so he comes over and yanks that duffel bag out from underneath me like he's like ripping a tablecloth off of a table. And it flips me over onto my back. I'm laying on the blacktop on my naked back, and it just kind of sizzles, And that was a sobering moment. I was like, oh, this is probably what bacon feels like when you throw it in the pan. But it was a sobering moment. Like, what have I gotten myself into? Like it's been pretty easy up to this point. But these guys mean business. Like they really mean business. And so that was kind of my journey. So I make it through RIP. I graduate RIP in December of 2005. I get assigned to 3rd Ranger Battalion December 7th of 2005. And that begins, and I remember them telling us, like, man, if you think this is bad, if you think that RIP is bad, wait till you get to your squad. and I just was like horrified of that thought. Like RIP was like the worst thing that we had done so far. And so I thought, surely it can't get worse. It got worse. It definitely got worse. Getting to the squads. because then you're not so much in a group. You don't have the safety of a group to hide behind. You have to prove yourself, and you really do. And just to be fully transparent with you guys as the audience, like, and anyone listening that knows me, just to be fully transparent, like, it was such culture shock for me because I had come from Bible school and church background, like where everything is soft and wonderful and lovely and kind, and all the things. Moving to this starkly different environment, where it was you prove it, you prove yourself, like, and I always here's full transparency again, like I've always kind of prided myself in like having a great personality, like it's easy for me to talk to people, like, and all the things. Man, I'll tell you what, the Rangers, they didn't care that I had a great personality, man. Like they flat out didn't care. I had to prove myself to them. And so, but I'm super grateful for that because it helped form me and shape me and make me, and it helped me believe in me, that I could do what was required. And so I don't know if they'll ever hear this or ever listen to this, but if you're listening, just off the top, when I first got to my squad, I want to thank, man, Fred Tolman. Fred Tolman was my very first team leader, and Fred, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I remember you telling me, Landers, when I'm done with you, you are going to be one tough SOB. And, and man, I hope that I made you proud, but thank you for doing that. Thank you for all your hard work. And man, I apologize for all that I put you through. Second, I want to thank Micah Deerenwater. He was another team leader in my squad, and he put up with me and poured a lot into me as well. And so thank you, Micah. Man, I truly appreciate you. And last, but certainly not least, Phil Paquette. Phil Paquette became my squad leader a few months in, and I'm forever grateful, man. Like Phil, I don't think anyone pushed me quite as hard as Phil did. And it's because I believe this to this day. Phil saw the potential in me to be good and to be great at it. And so he really forced me and pushed me to bring that out of me. And so Phil, thank you for doing that, brother. I owe you a lot. Thank you. So that's kind of how it started. So I was at battalion for about 3 months before I deployed for the first time, and deployed to BIOP for my first rotation. Some of my older GWOT guys might remember, but there was a row of 10 houses. We called it the MSS. And we got to live in house number 2. I remember living in house number 2. And we stayed there for half the deployment. And then we got redeployed to Balad and stood up an assault force, a task force out of Balad, and operated out of there for a while, or for the remainder of the deployment. So that was my first trip over, man. And I remember coming home, just feeling really accomplished and really good about everything. And, I felt like I had earned my place. Excuse me. Felt like I'd earned my place in the squad, earned their respect a little, and, kind of proven that I was capable and that, that I could think and all the things. And then I kind of started letting my real slick personality come out. and then it was more, accepted. Anyway, so gosh, man, if you're thinking about joining the military, don't show personality, brother. Just get in there and prove it. All right. So after I'd earned the respect of the squad, you can't hold leadership at the Ranger Regiment or the Ranger Battalion. You cannot hold leadership until you earn your tab, right? So you go through RIP, and that gets you your Ranger scroll. You've earned the right to be there, and you got to earn that right to be there every single day. But then before you can lead and before you can take a team, you have to go get your tab. You got to go to Ranger school, the 60-day leadership school. So they decide that I'm ready, and they want to send me to Ranger school. So I start prepping and do all the things to do that. And in a few days, I think it was a few days or maybe a week before I was supposed to leave, I rolled my ankle really bad, like running across a parking lot. We were on our way to do PT, and like we were just jogging across the parking lot to go to this field to do some PT. And I rolled my ankle real bad, like turned black instantly. And anyway, so hurt my ankle. And that kind of put a delay on things and kind of slowed me up in the process. So I ended up getting left behind for the next deployment so that I could go to Ranger school, and so that I don't muddle things and mess things up. Like, I'll just kind of fast forward through some of it, but I eventually make it through Ranger school. And luckily I went straight through Ranger school, and I still believe to this day that it depends on what grader you have, and what cadre you have, what kind of mood he's in that day. And luckily I went straight through. So I'm very grateful to have gone straight through that. So graduate Ranger school, it was class 1107, and graduated that, come back to battalion, and I'm excited because everybody's forward, everybody's deployed, and I'm like, yes, we're probably going to get like 2 weeks of leave, and then we're going to deploy and kind of catch up with the boys. And that is not what happened. The first sergeant pulled us into his office, and he was like, hey, congratulations, men, you made it. You're going to go to WLC. And man, I was pissed. I was upset, angry, because I did not want to go to WLC. I wanted to go back overseas and meet up with the squad. And so I was really upset that didn't happen, because now we just had to wait out their deployment and wait for them to come home, and you just feel like you're missing out. And so we end up going to WLC, and that was as worthless as I thought it was going to be. I hated it, every second of it. And so I just remember having a lot of fun in the field exercise in WLC, because, we were fresh out of Ranger school. And so watching all these other like soft skill MOSs like go on patrols and stuff was hysterical. And we were just eating it up. Like, we thought it was the funniest thing. And so make it through WLC. And then by the time I make it through WLC, it's about time for the platoon to come home. So the boys are all coming home. And during the time that they were gone, and after WLC, I had met some guys from one of the specialty shops, from one of the specialty sections. And that section was called TSE, stood for Technical Surveillance and Electronics. And just kind of getting to know those guys and hearing what they did. And, I thought it was super cool. Like, it was really intriguing. They did a lot of sneaky stuff. And I thought it was so cool, man. Because I'm kind of a nerd at heart, you can probably tell. But I was just really intrigued by the things that they did. So I was like, man, I want to go over there. I want to go to some of that sneaky stuff. And so I had worked up the courage, to tell my squad leader, and it was Phil. I'd worked up the courage to tell him, but I kind of dreaded his reaction, because I was like, this is going to go bad, or it's going to go really bad. Like, I didn't think it was going to go good. I was like, this is going to go bad, or it's going to go worse. And so Phil comes back to the AO, and I was like, hey, Sergeant, can I talk to you about something? And he's like, yeah. So I tell him, hey, I want to go to TSE. And his reaction was exactly what I thought it was going to be. He's like, are you kidding me? And this is a testament to the leader that Phil is, man. Like, he could have smoked me. He could have scuffed me up. He could have told me what a piece of crap I was for wanting to leave the squad or leave the platoon. But he took about a minute and a half, and kind of digested it. And he was like, all right, come on. And he took me up to the platoon sergeant, and we had the conversation that, hey, Landers wants to go to TSE. And so Phil, again, thank you, man. I know you didn't have to do that. Thank you for doing that. So he just didn't want to hold me back in anything I wanted to do. Like, that was the leader that he was, or is. So Phil lets me go to the TSE shop, and there was a little selection. There was a selection within the Ranger Battalion to get over to the specialty shops. So, because they have to test you and evaluate you and make sure they even want you over there. And you have to have some, level of proficiency to prove that you're able to be over there and operate kind of on your own. And so So I passed their selection and I got picked up. Shout out to Mike Lowry. Shout out to Nate Smith and Ben Esperson for kind of talking me through that process and and helping me over there. So thank you. And Mike Lowry, man, thank you. Thank you for taking a risk on me, brother. I really appreciate it. So I got picked up at the TSE shop and they put me to work. We start going TDY all over the place, training and filling my head with all sorts of really cool knowledge and stuff. And man, it was fun. It was everything that I had hoped it would be. And I really had hoped that would set me up for success on the outside. And that was one of the driving forces of why I wanted to go over there. So just kind of fast forward, I deployed twice with the TSE shop and it finished out my initial contract. And I am one of those guys that like almost re-enlisted. I almost did it, and but seriously, like I did evaluate, re-enlistment and looked at all the courses and things that I could get for staying in. And I just believed that it was time to move on. I just really never did pull the trigger on it. And really, I made the best decision that I could have with the information I had at the time, So I decided to go on and get out. And, because I think Nate Smith was the first one to get picked up by this company on the outside. He'd gotten out and he got picked up by this company doing a really cool job, making good money. And so that was, super appealing to me. So I went on and got out and I submitted my resume with Nate's company and ended up getting hired. And that was great, man. I do remember the day that I signed out of the Army. I signed out and all the guys in the section, they were gone. Like they were already TDY somewhere training. And I kind of walked through the AO and looking at everybody's wall lockers. And I was like, well, this is it. I'll never see these guys again. And it was just like this finalized moment. I knew I would see him again, but it just felt like this really hard cutoff, of like, it's not gonna be the same anymore. And I think what played into that was like, I had just been to crit Iraq. Like I was just running missions and stuff into crit. And 30 days later, I'm a civilian. So like I flew home from Tikrit and I got out of the Army in 30 days. And so there was no preparation whatsoever for me to exit the service and like get my head wrapped around it. Like there was just, the Army just didn't do anything. And I don't know if it's changed. According to First Sergeant Fliss, it's changed quite a bit, but it can still stand a lot of improvement. And so I get out, I wake up the morning after, I had hung up the uniform and I wake up the morning after and I literally thought that morning like, I was cool yesterday and today I'm nobody. That was like day one out of the Army. Now, so I can see how somebody would spiral really quickly. However, I had that job lined up. And so 2 months later, I was flying out. I was gone, to start this new job. And that was in Afghanistan. So I was back and forth to Afghanistan for the next 4 years contracting. And so I thought that I was doing myself a favor by contracting, like, I'm just going to ease back into civilian life. But really, man, it was no different. Like I was still on a deployment schedule. I was still surrounded by the war and, eat, sleeping, breathing that stuff, and never did take my mind off of it. And so it wasn't until like late 2013, I ended up quitting the contract job because I wanted to stay home. Like I had started looking around and all the guys that I was working with, I was watching them and no judgment. I don't mean any judgment by this at all, but I was watching them like miss their kids grow up. And I was watching them like miss their birthdays and anniversaries and, high school graduations, kindergarten graduations. I was watching them miss important milestone moments. And I remember thinking like, I don't want to do that. Like I'm afraid to do that. I don't want to miss those moments. And I didn't even have kids at the time, but I just knew that I needed to get out if we were going to start a family. And my wife had been talking about starting a family. So decided that it was time. So late 2013, I quit and man, we packed up the house, put it on the market. And we moved from South Georgia, Fort Benning. We moved from there all the way home to Texas. And so that is where my personal struggle really began. So I had the Army contract, and then I had all the years of contracting. And that is when the struggle began, is when I left it and drew that line in the sand of like, hey, no more, I'm not going overseas anymore. That's when I really started to struggle. And truthfully, I didn't know what was happening. Like, I didn't know that I was struggling. I didn't know why I was in this mental space of like, I couldn't make myself do anything. I hated to wake up in the morning because I really had just wanted to die in my sleep. Like I'd go to sleep and hope that I would just fall asleep and not wake up. Man, I was just in a really dark space, and I didn't dare say anything to anybody because, one, I dared not say anything to any civilian person or family member because I was an airborne ranger, the epitome of, this tough figure when you think about it, when you think about what an airborne ranger is. So I dared not say anything to them because I didn't want them to think less of me, right? And I dared not say anything to the boys. I dared not say anything to those guys that I'd served with because I didn't want to let them down. I had this in my mind that I'll be letting them down if they know I'm struggling. I'll be letting those guys down if they find out that I'm this weak, because the Ranger Regiment is this place that's built on mental toughness, right? Mental fortitude. And I just remember thinking, like, somewhere I've lost it. I've lost my mental fortitude. I don't know what's happening. And so I just felt like I had to shoulder that alone and carry that alone. All these years later, looking back, when the boys find out, they go, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you text us? Why didn't you call us? We would have come and seen you, kind of thing. And it's not just me. It's so many of us get out and we think that we got to do it alone, or that we're the only ones struggling, or that we're the only ones that are in this mental space, or we're going to be weak if we say anything. And none of that's true, man. It's all this negative internal dialogue that you have. None of it's true. None of it. So I got really depressed, to a spot where I started feeling like I was a burden to everybody around me. And I really, truly believed that. Like, it wasn't just some fleeting thought. I really, really, truly thought I am so useless that I'm just a burden to my family. I'm a burden to my wife. I'm a burden to everybody around me. Like, no good comes from my existence. And so I never planned any suicidal things, but I certainly had the suicidal thoughts. I definitely thought of, man, I should just end this. I should just put a stop to all of this because I am such a burden, and everybody truly would be better off if I was gone. And I started to believe that. And so, man, I understand it. If you get to that place, I understand how you get to that place. And, luckily, my dad being a veteran, my dad being an Air Force guy, he understood what was happening. He saw me kind of spiraling like that. And he came to me one day, and it was very simple. Like, it wasn't some, crazy breakthrough moment where I burst into tears or anything. But Dad came to me and he said, "Hey, man, it's time to get some help." Just like that. That's all he said. "Hey, dude, it's time to get some help. You're not okay." Man, I knew he was right. So I went to the VA. I, got scheduled and went to the VA and filling out their paperwork and all this stuff to get into their system. And I hand my paperwork to the guy at the VA desk, and he's like, "All right, man, everything looks great. You got it all, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "We can see you in 3 months." And when he said 3 months, I was expecting or needing help that day, And when he said 3 months, I felt like my whole heart just go into my stomach. And I put my hands on the desk and I leaned over and got as close as I could to this guy. And I said, "Dude, I can't go one more day feeling the way I feel." And I'm grateful, man. I'm great because that guy didn't know me he sees, I don't know how many hundreds of veterans he sees every single day. but that guy had compassion on me, and he goes, "Okay, man, come on." And he didn't hold my hand, but he could have, and I wouldn't have cared. But he walked me upstairs to mental health, and I was able to see a doctor, and I was able to leave that day with medication. And people talk a lot of crap. People talk a lot of stuff about the VA, but I will say this, man. Because of guys like that work there are some good ones there, man. And because of that guy, I was able to get medication, and I was able to leave that day with medicine. I was able to be seen that day, and that guy and that medication likely saved my life. Okay, so I know that we all have our own experiences with the VA, but I will never tell somebody not to go because they saved my life, man. So, and that's a whole nother can of worms, man. I know that we're all, averse to taking medications and being on, different drugs and all the things, I know all those things, but it helped me. It helped me kind of climb out of that depressive state that I was in. A few weeks of taking that medicine, and like the cobwebs started clearing out of my head, and I was able to think, and I was able to function and become a person again, and and enjoy the small moments again. And so, and that it wasn't without side effect. I was having migraines, and I was having like really bad restless leg and stuff. So I had some side effects, but I was able to function again as a person. So I'm grateful for that. And through that kind of climb out of the hole, I landed a job in Dallas with my brother-in-law, Brian. Thank you, man, for taking a chance on me. I feel like a lot of people have taken chances on me. So Brian hooked me up with a job and took a chance on me and put me to work in Dallas. And so that was great. That was life-changing. And all the while kind of masking depression, masking everything with medication, and I knew that I didn't want to be on medicine forever, but that was just what I had in the moment. Well, fast forward to, 2017 or 2018, I finally find a doctor that wants to test my hormones. And so I get my hormones tested, and my testosterone was 150. 150. So nearly dead. I felt like garbage. So bad, like I couldn't even make it through the day. Like I would be sitting at my desk and be like, I need to fall asleep like right now. And just, I could have. So it was like, if you've been through Ranger School, it was like Ranger School sleepy, where it doesn't matter. You can fall asleep standing up. You can fall asleep laying down. You can lean your head up against a tree, and you can just go to sleep. That's how I was. And it's because my testosterone was 150. So I get on a protocol to fix that. And sure enough, man, as soon as that level comes up and everything starts working again, and my thoughts are even clearer, and my testosterone level comes way up to where it's supposed to be, and I'm able to get off of depression meds. I'm able to get off antidepressants because my hormones were fixed. And so that was great, man. That was a huge win. And so I'm a huge advocate of that as well. Like if you're depressed, sure, get on antidepressants and, go down that path. Do what your doctor tells you. I'm not a doctor. Don't take medical advice from me. But if your doctor recommends that you should take an antidepressant, probably do it. But also ask them to test your hormones as well. Because, man, that was a game changer for me to have that fixed. So here's where we get to the good stuff. So that was like a brief down and dirty of just the military history, the contract history. But now, I'm working this job in Dallas, and I'm off of antidepressants. My testosterone's good again, and I'm still searching though. And I search for myself in accomplishment. I search for myself in task accomplishment, in anything that is job related. So I think after you get out of the military, we all do that, right? Because the military takes you and they form you and they make you what they want you to be, and they tell you who you are. And so you associate your identity with what you are doing. And I was doing the same thing in the civilian sector, going, well, this is my job. And I'm not worth anything unless I accomplish this in this job. I'm not valuable unless I'm providing this to the company. And so I was always wrapping my identity into something I was doing. I was Airborne Ranger. That was my identity. And then that was gone. I wasn't that anymore. And so now I'm college student, because in that depressive phase, I went back to school, and I was college student, and then I got the job in Dallas, and now I'm this whatever the job title was. I don't remember what it was, but now I'm this, and my value is directly associated with the amount of effort that I put in, or the amount of value that I provide, or how early I show up, or how late I stay, or how hard I work. And that was my identity. And too many of us do that. Too many of us do that. And we get out and we search for identity in something rather than just being. And I'm not saying that you need to sit on your butt and do nothing, but I am saying that you have to differentiate between the two. You don't need to go join a motorcycle club to find identity. You don't need to go climb Everest to find identity. But that's what we do as these hard charging, like accomplishment driven people. That's what we think. We think that my value is directly related to something that I'm accomplishing or working towards. And it's not true. And there is nothing wrong with any of those things. There's nothing wrong with motorcycle clubs. There's nothing wrong with climbing Everest. There's nothing wrong with being a driven person to go and do those things. Nothing wrong with it at all. But you got to make the clear distinction in your mind. You got to make the clear distinction that, hey, like I had to learn, it's okay to just be Arlin. And there was a point in my life where I couldn't even say that out loud, where I couldn't even say, it's okay to be Arlin. It's okay to just be me, because I hated myself so much. Like I had such a negative internal dialogue that was just horrible and would say terrible things to me. And I would believe it, And I could go on and on. When my PT started slacking after I left the contract world, when my run times weren't as fast as they used to be, when I started having back pain and knee pain and stuff, and I couldn't lift as much as I want, like it's all ego stuff, man. But I let that dictate my inner dialogue, a very negative internal dialogue, and I started to believe it. Right. So be careful there, man. You got to discover your identity apart from whatever you're doing, apart from your job, apart from being husband, apart from being dad. You have to find out who you are and be okay sitting with you. Like, do you hate the silence so much that you can't sit there with your own self? That's an issue. That's a problem. If you don't have peace enough to sit alone with yourself and with your own thoughts, that's a big problem, man. And that's where you got to start. You got to discover that piece. You got to figure out who you are before you ever can figure out where you're going. So again, this is why we exist, man. This is why we exist. So how did I find my identity? I found mine by sitting with a counselor. I began to find mine by sitting with a counselor. And she's a counselor in Texas. Her name is Audra Dahl. I think I shouted her out in the last episode. But she's very familiar with working with veterans. They have an amazing program that sponsors veterans on a scholarship. And so you can go for next to nothing. And she just asked the right questions. And she was very gentle with me because, I had big ego, man. Big ego, big attitude of, I'm too tough to struggle with anything, just complete denial stuff, man. But she was very gentle and asked the right questions and made me say it, like, that sounds like PTSD. That sounds like I don't know who I am. And so sitting with her was life changing because she just asked the right questions. And so that's what I encourage you to do is, if you have sat with a counselor before and you couldn't stand it and you hated it, go find a different one, right? And please don't rely on the VA to have a good counselor. There might be a good one there, but there's likely a lot of bad ones. So don't be afraid to explore the civilian sector and just try, man. And you'll know within that session of, this is a person I can see again, or this is not a person I'm going to see again. Simple as that. But don't give up because you tried it once, right? That's not committing to the process. So find one that asks the right questions, that makes you, and if it's not a counselor, find a mentor, find someone that you trust and respect enough to receive the truth from them. Shout out to Eric Daniels. Eric Daniels was one of those people for me. He just asks the right questions. So I would sit with a counselor and then I would meet with Eric. He was my mentor for a while, just in career stuff and life direction. And he would ask me deep introspective questions that I didn't have the answers to. And he'd say, okay, well, by the next time we meet, you're going to have those answers for me. And he just held me accountable. So if it's not a counselor, find a mentor, find someone that you look up to, that you want your life to look like, and listen to what they say. Let them ask you the hard questions and don't be defensive. Just do it. Okay. So the next thing I needed, discovering identity. Now I needed purpose in my life. I had a job. Great. But that's not a purpose. That's just something you do. And, so what about purpose? Why do we need that? Well, because in the military, they always told you what to do. They always told you what to wear, where to be, what uniform you should be in, what time you're eating, what the mission for the day is, what the grand overall mission is. They tell you all that stuff. It's just provided for you. And so that area of your brain just gets shut off to analytical thinking and reasoning. Like it gets turned off and you get so used to just taking orders. So that when you get out, you don't realize, or I didn't realize that, oh man, now I'm responsible. Like I just viewed it as I've got total freedom now. I've got total freedom to do whatever I want, to go wherever I want, to be whatever I want, and I'm going to crush anything I do because I'm a Ranger. And I was in for a rude awakening, a very rude awakening, because to crush anything that you put your mind to, it takes a lot of planning, a lot of preparation, a lot of, big picture dreaming, and then putting small action steps in place. And I wasn't doing that. I wasn't analyzing big picture and backwards planning and going, hey, this is what it's going to take to get there. I just wasn't, because that part of my brain was just switched off, And so again, with the counselor and with sitting with Eric and having those right questions asked, we started discovering purpose. We started discovering what purpose in my life looked like. Like what was a deep and meaningful moment for me, back from when I was a kid or a teenager, or, what was a monumental moment in my life where it helped form and shape me into who I am. And so self-discovering those things and journaling those things began to unpack what my life purpose looked like. The repeating theme for me was always, man, I truly do. I love people. I love getting to know people. I love hearing people's stories. Man, that stuff just charges me up, right? And what I love more than anything is, and I hope this doesn't come across as arrogant, but what I love more than anything is someone saying to me, Arlin, my life is different because of your involvement, or my life is different because of you. And I'm not saying that in a way that I need that as validation for my worth, because I don't. But that to me is the measure of hitting the mark. How do I know that I've hit the mark? because I made an impact in someone else's life. Like that fuels me and fires me up and gives me purpose, right? And so that's what I'm doing with Brothers Compass. That's why I started this thing, is because it's what I truly enjoy. If that's the thing that would drive me to get out of bed in the morning, is to make an impact in someone else's life, right? And so you have to do that same thing. You got to sit with yourself enough and ask yourself enough introspective questions and journal and write and go, what are these things that drive me, that fire me up? What are the things that ignite my soul? And just a few, man, just a few for you to do as homework. Where can you go where you would feel at peace? Like a location. Think about that. Where can you go where you would feel at peace? Question number one. Number two, what can you do? What can you do where you would feel at peace? Like, what's the thing that you would go and do? And you know that coming out of that having done that thing, you would feel fulfilled and at peace and happy. What is that thing? Right? That's a start. That's just a start. Those two questions. Spend some time, write those down, think about them. You might know the answer right away. You might not. Because when I started getting asked these questions, I had abandoned myself so bad to the point I couldn't answer those. It took me like weeks to come up with the answer. And so maybe you're in that spot. Maybe you're in that spot of self-abandonment, and like, my value comes from self-abandonment and self-sacrifice and placing everybody before me. And let me just tell you, that doesn't work. It's not going to work. That's very much my story, and what I do or have done in the past. And I'm unlearning that habit, right? I'm learning to take care of me and learning that that's not a selfish thing. All right. And the last thing about purpose, if you're still unclear on your purpose, here's something I want you to do. Here's an exercise I want you to do. Here's the third question. If time or money was not an issue, like if you could live forever, if you were never going to die and you had unlimited money, what impact on the world would you have? Like, what mark would you leave on the world? What would you put that money towards? How would you spend your daily life? What would you build? What would you accomplish? What injustice in the world would you solve? But since time is a problem, and since money is a problem, that thing, the answer to this question is a vision, right? It's this all-encompassing vision. It supersedes your lifetime. It goes well beyond how long you're going to live. And if you're my age, man, you've probably got 40 years left, if you're lucky. Maybe more. You think of this vision, you think of something so big that supersedes your lifetime that there's no way that you could accomplish it in your entire life. And now you backwards plan from that. Like, this is what I would accomplish if time and money weren't a problem, right? Now you have to break it down by decade or by century, even if it's going to take that long. And then you have to break it down into how many years you have left on this planet. And go, well, this is the vision. This is the mark that I would leave on the world. This is the injustice that I would solve in this world. But I've got this much time. So every day I'm going to work towards this. Brother, that is purpose. That's purpose. So you got to think big picture, vision. Like, I'm talking like 100,000-foot view over everything. That's your vision. But your purpose falls within that, within your lifetime, within the remaining years that you have. That thing should drive you to get out of bed in the morning. That thing should fire you up and ignite your soul. Listen, man, because life's too short. Life is too short for you to live doing something that you hate. Life is too short for you to dedicate your life just going to some job that you hate just for a paycheck, just so the kids can eat. Here, I know. The kids have to eat. The family has to eat. You have to provide. I understand. I fully understand it. Okay. But don't let your entire being be wrapped up into that job. Okay. Don't let it. Find something that you're working towards to leave a mark on the world. Because what I see with veterans, what I see with service members is it takes a special type of person to serve, right? We are the 1%ers for a reason, because it takes that type of person that says, I will sacrifice myself for this country. I will lay down my wants and needs and desires for the country. And so we find great fulfillment in that because that's just the type of person we are. And so it's the same on the outside. I don't want you to get out and think, well, I did my time and have this veteran ego thing. You got to let that go too. I did my time. I served. I did mine. Sure. Great. But are you miserable about it now? What I have found and what I've seen, and this is just my personal experience, I could be wrong. I have found that veterans are so much happier when they're still being of service, when they're doing something with their life that is of service to somebody else. Okay, so that's just food for thought. Think about that. Maybe it's the truth for you. It is certainly the truth for me. Anyway, I know that's a lot. I know I talked fast. I was trying to cram it all in there. If you have questions about anything, man, if you got questions about my timeline or anything, or it doesn't matter. Just send me a message. I'm happy to answer any questions you got. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for listening. And look forward to episode 4 coming out in a few weeks. See ya.
That's a true story, cause I've been there. Been hanging on a limb with no care. Just doing my thing, screaming nowhere. Like, who cares? I was out doing my things.